Welcome to Blood Binge, where we satisfy your thirst for all things horror. My name is Sloan, and today we're looking at the classic 2006 Saw 3 to figure out exactly where each character falls on the moral spectrum of good to evil, as well as how Jigsaw evolves when it comes to morals. Saw is a franchise that has always had a reputation for being gory, but in retrospect, the third installation is the one that really earned it. The traps were torturous, the camera shied away from nothing, the pig parts just kept coming. Today, we're going to take a look at what was underneath all that blood and the people who were shedding it. We'll be ranking the characters of Saw 3 from good to evil and adding a new slasher to our evil board. With that said, to the rules! First up, we'll be breaking down characters into 3 categories: the good, the gray area, and the bad to evil, starting with the most noble and ending with the most evil. Afterwards, we'll check the full leaderboard to see who the biggest saints and sinners are, as well as reveal our in-depth ranking of the killer's evil level. Our depraved formula will rank our killers on a scale of 1 to 100 to see how they stack up against other horror movie killers. Finally, we'll be looking specifically at Saw 3 today. This means that we're looking at the actions of characters in this movie and the preceding 2, but not any other sequels. Those morality questions are all for other videos later down the line. With that said, let's get right to it because you haven't seen anything yet. As usual, we'll start with the most noble character and work our way down. These characters are the good. We'll be kicking off the list with Dylan and Corbett, the joint recipients of our Gold Medal of Good. While neither one is given much screen time, we feel like they play an important role in the story in both a literal and figurative context. Dylan dies off screen before the start of the movie. It's this tragedy that leads to the downfall of both of his parents and makes them targets for Jigsaw's group trap.
You alone can grant her the gift of life.
We only see him in glimpsed flashback scenes, and he isn't developed very well as a character in his own right. From the way his surviving family mourns him, it's clear that he was a well-loved kid. While that doesn't inherently mean he was good, it says a lot about the impact he was able to make. It also speaks to our larger point that Dylan was symbolic of innocence. His parents lost not only a son, but their moral compasses. Likewise, his surviving sister Corbett is a bit of an on-screen enigma in a literal context, but she symbolizes the same childlike innocence of her brother. She's coping with the same tremendous familial loss as her parents, but is handling it much better. This becomes all the more apparent when you realize that she's virtually handling it alone. She was abandoned by her mother, Lynn, and all her father's attention is on her deceased brother. They're learning to ignore her needs in the same way that they're learning to ignore their own consciences. The siblings earn the Gold Medal of Good not just for being good children, which they genuinely seem to be for the little bit we get to see them, but for representing morality on a more abstract level. The Silver Medal of Good goes to Carrie. Her obsession with the Jigsaw case and with recovering the corrupt Eric Matthews is clearly leading her to an unhealthy place before her ultimate demise. She really isn't appreciating what she has in life or finding joy in anything, but let's be real, this is probably one of the least justified reasons to be tortured to death in this franchise. While this makes her an ideal candidate for a trap of her own by Jigsaw's moral standards, we have a tough time knocking points off for any of this. She's not really hurting anyone but herself, and she's doing it for what she believes is the greater good. The long nights, the fact that she takes her work home with her, and the fact that she hasn't given up on finding Eric Matthews, these all mean that she is more caring and invested than even we gave her credit for.
Eric, is it him?
Even though Eric wasn't a good person, she felt responsible for getting him onto the case that led to his disappearance, and we have to really admire her perseverance in trying to get him back. Our Bronze Medal of Good winner is Judge Halden. What gets him on Jigsaw's radar, and Jeff's for that matter, is the lenient sentence he gives to the drunk driver that killed Jeff's son. Since we're seeing the trap play out from Jeff's perspective, Judge Halden is definitely introduced as a villain. Just looking at his actions on screen, however, this man is a saint compared to other characters.
Vengeance doesn't solve anything, it only makes the pain greater, Jeff.
He tries to reason with Jeff and make things better, even when he believes Jeff is the one responsible for the torture that he's enduring. This may have just been him trying to bargain for his life, but he's the only victim in the trap who's able to stay even remotely level-headed, despite maybe enduring the most suffering. Well, the pig parts may not have been painful exactly, but his torture lasts by far the longest, and like the grossest. What we can't dispute is that he ultimately dies trying to save Timothy. Yes, he died in an incredibly stupid way, and only after he had let Timothy suffer by wasting time trying to reason with Jeff, but he died willing to suffer himself to save the life of a young man when he didn't think Jeff would do the same. Even though it failed horribly, the fact that he tried when he didn't have to and lost his life in the process was heroic. Following our judge, we have Deborah. You may have forgotten her or not realized she had a name, but this woman was Lynn's co-worker in the hospital. She does a rousing, Grey's Anatomy-worthy speech that could definitely be seen as a lecture, but mostly seems to come from a place of tough love.
You got something on your mind, go upstairs to psych.
She knows that Lynn is a hard worker, a devoted doctor, and isn't doing her best by the patients the way she used to. So she calls her out on it. She's either a good friend or a great nurse, and either way, we're giving her credit for it. And finally, to wrap up our good category, we have Jill. She has no speaking lines in this movie, and we have to go largely off of implication, but Jill's brief presence sheds a tremendous light on who John Kramer is as a person. As he balances on the edge of life and death during his brain surgery, he sees a woman whom he calls out to with words of love.
I love you.
Much like the Denlin children symbolize good for their parents, Jill seems to represent the humanity in John. It's a much softer side of him that we've never even seen, and it seems to be reserved for Jill. If she can inspire that in someone as warped as John, she can earn a tentative place just above our gray section. With that said, our good section comes to a close. These next characters fall in the neutral territory of our morality spectrum. This is the gray area. We're going to start off with Hoffman. Hoffman is the forensics guy. We're putting him in the gray area because we only see him briefly and he doesn't make much of an impression. We have learned our lesson about giving people the benefit of the doubt based on profession alone, and Hoffman doesn't seem particularly invested in his work or motivated to catch Jigsaw. His non-committal attitude gives us nothing to work with, leaving him as ambiguous as humanly possible. A perfect gray. Then we have Rigg. We actually see less of Rigg than we did in Saw 2, where he lost points for letting Eric get violent with a suspect. He seems to have toned down quite a bit in this one and concerned for Carrie's well-being. That's not really enough to move him up or down the rankings too far, but we thought he was worth mentioning since he's a recurring character who does make an appearance here. And speaking of recurring characters who aren't given much screen time in this installation, let's talk about our next pick, Adam. It's interesting how much higher on the list Adam is, relatively speaking, than he was when he first appeared. While he made the bad evil list last time, he's been officially bumped up to gray, not because of his own actions, but because the bar has significantly dropped. Morality is relative after all, and in comparison to the genuinely bad people we have on the list, Adam's spying on people has stopped looking that bad, unless it's my bathroom window. All we see him do, or rather fail to do, in this installation is escape, and we can't really blame him for that. Next up, we've got Troy, another ambiguous figure whose early death in the film serves mostly as exposition for the mechanical failures in Amanda's trap designs. Based off of the tape that's left for him, we know that he's been in prison multiple times, but not what for. Jigsaw accuses him of preferring life in chains to a life of freedom, but based on the painful way in which he dies, maybe his life in chains was safer.
Break those chains once and for all.
And for our last entry of moral ambiguity, we have Danica, whose crime is literally nothing. What brings Jeff's wrath upon her is the fact that she doesn't testify against the drunk driver who killed Dylan. She's scared of testifying and ultimately just pretends that she didn't see anything, resulting in a light sentence for the driver and more fuel on the fire of Jeff's hatred. Was it cowardly? Yes. Selfish? Undoubtedly. But as to whether or not it makes her a bad person, that's hard to say. We don't know anything about her other than this one discretion, which really isn't as bad as some of what's to come. Finally, we have reached the end of the gray area and we've entered the dark side. These characters are the bad and evil. Kicking off our bad and evil category, we have the drunk driver himself, Timothy. We're putting him up here because even though he's painted as the worst character in Jeff's story, the accident was a genuine mistake. Anyone who gets behind a wheel drunk and anyone who kills a child is probably always going to be on our bad and evil list. But the fact that Timothy looks sincerely remorseful for Dylan's loss means that he really isn't the monster that Jeff would believe him to be.
This device is going to start twisting.
He's someone who made a mistake. It was a dumb, terrible, fatal mistake, but the fact that he didn't mean to do it and had no evil intention brings him to at least the top of the bad list. Now, let's move on to our next subject, Dr. Lynn Denlin. She and her husband Jeff have suffered an unimaginable loss before the beginning of the movie. Their inability to cope healthily with the loss of their son Dylan gets them stuck in Jigsaw's trap, which only causes more undeserved pain. And honestly, the couple were neck and neck for who ranks higher morally. We'll get back around to why Lynn did finally pull ahead, but for right now, let's look at what keeps her from being a good person. She abandons her husband and daughter after her son is run over by a drunk driver. It's not shown on screen the exact order of events, but it is implied that she leaves Jeff for a fresh start before the worst of his anger issues set in. He's actually seen asking their daughter, "What would your mother think if she could see us now?" What's worse is that she doesn't divorce Jeff or give him an ounce of closure that he so desperately needs. When her new guy suggests that she gets a divorce, we actually see her walking out, clearly exasperated with him as well. We're left to wonder if this is the same sort of notice she gave her family before she left. Now that her new partner cares about her enough to be bothered by the presence of her husband, she seems ready to abandon him as well, painting her as very selfish, vacant, and self-absorbed. Her depression is also affecting her work. We see that she's taking medication for it, but we also see her freezing up in the ER and struggling to save the lives of children at work. She needs to be called into action to do her job, and that's a very dangerous thing in a life or death scenario that she'd be needing to face daily. What wins Lynn some points is the fact that we see her trying. Asked to put himself through physical harm to save the people who have hurt him. It would be one thing to spare a man's life who had wronged him, but he's asked to take a literal bullet for the man who killed his child. That's a lot. So let's really look at Jeff, since he is up next on our list. He probably gets the worst deal in the movie. His son dies, his wife walks out on him, leaves him a shattered man responsible for a child. He doesn't get justice against the drunk driver, and then he's kidnapped and tortured for the crime of fantasizing about revenge. Not only does he have to destroy precious memories of his deceased kid to survive, he's also asked to put himself through physical harm to save the people who have hurt him.
I wanted to kill him every day.
It would be one thing to spare a man's life who had wronged him, but he's asked to take a literal bullet for the man who killed his child. That's a lot. Jeff loses some points for being the only person to survive a group trap that everyone could have walked away from. He loses more points when you consider that all the physical and emotional harm he had to put himself through to save a person was something he'd have to put himself through anyway, just to continue making it through the warehouse. We do give him credit for trying though, even when he usually tried far too late so he could watch a little bit of suffering first. But what really makes him worse than his wife, if only by a little, is the fact that he doesn't learn. It looks like he's making progress on letting go, but when we see how happy he looks to kill John, it becomes obvious that his attention just shifted to a new person that had been causing him pain.
I was your final test of forgiveness.
He shot Amanda for shooting Lynn, but John gave him the opportunity to save Lynn's life and take her home. Sure, Jeff didn't know that the collar around Lynn's neck would explode if John's heart stopped, but he knew that she was bleeding out, that John wouldn't call for a doctor unless Jeff forgave him, and he still chose a slow, violent manner of death for his revenge that ended up killing them all. Also, he had to be reminded of his daughter after he had failed his trap. He knew that Jigsaw had taken him and his wife. Honestly, where did he think his living kid was at? The Bronze Medal of Evil is awarded to Eric Matthews. Again! A common theme that you'll notice from this point, if you haven't already, is that there are sympathetic sides to all our wrongdoers. Perhaps nowhere is this more evident than with Eric Matthews. We know that Eric is a bad person. He also took the bronze medal in our last video with some pretty stiff competition. He framed innocent people, had anger issues, and was guilty of police brutality that set a terrible and violent example for other members of the precinct.
Open your mouth. Open your mouth.
In this movie, it's easy to forget all of those things that we knew about him. The few clips we see him, he's struggling to survive, being subjected to the same tortures as other victims with no hope of escape, and being brutalized by Amanda. What earns him the bronze a second time is that even though he's not in the film a lot, we still know all the bad things he's done. Let's not forget that he had escaped and would have been free had he suppressed his anger long enough to let Amanda get ahead of him in sneaking out. Even injured and on the verge of bleeding out, he still had to fight for a more violent escape and call her names until she's engaged with him.
You're nothing!
He doesn't have a redemption arc. He hasn't learned anything, and it's worth mentioning that he's a worse person than Jeff or Lynn, even though they were the main focus here. The silver medal of evil goes to John Kramer. Of course, we'll be digging deeper into this when breaking down his score on the evil board, but for now, let's just cover why he's coming in second and not first. He's still an evil, horrible man and a psychotic killer, and we're not going to justify any of his terrible actions in this movie or the two before it. What saves him from earning the gold for a third time in a row is that he was able to mold a killer even worse than him. There is also something to be said for the fact that he is willing to put his own life on the line.
Now you must pay the price.
We understand that no one's life has to be on the line were it not for his insane torture games, but the fact that he too is willing to die painfully puts an uncomfortable emphasis on just how much he buys into what he's doing. It's never good to test the fabric of human nature by torturing and killing people for not appreciating the life they have, but at least he's willing to put himself through an equal amount of suffering to find his answers. He would rather die a painful death at the hands of a subject than leave his work and his legacy in the hands of someone he doesn't trust to uphold his moral code. Which brings us to Amanda Young, the winner of our gold medal of evil. The student has surpassed the master of cruelty. Last video, we gave Amanda some leeway for how she's being manipulated by John, although it's still undeniable that he has led her down this path and is at least partially responsible for all of her kills. She has to start taking credit for her own actions sometime. Not only has she designed her own traps, kidnapped the victims for these games, and fully embraced the teachings of a crazy serial killer, but she failed his morality test. Like, really, think about how depraved you have to be to fail the morality test of a killer even after he's been personally grooming you to carry on his own work. Amanda has experienced 2 of these tests, 3 if you count the house trap that she helped plan, and fully presents herself as wanting to carry on John's work. After saying that he saved her and backing up his moral code in the previous movie, we were left with the impression that she's killing to carry on this mission. Saw 3 paints her actions in a more selfish and upsetting light. The tests she creates are unwinnable.
The guy couldn't get out if he wanted to.
She seems to take genuine pride in her work, but also genuine pleasure in torturing and scaring Lynn, something that John makes clear he frowns upon. Her motivations seem to be less about helping people in the same way she believes she's been helped, and more about punishing them for being less than perfect. There also may be more about getting her attention from John. He says that he despises murderers, but yet she takes multiple lives. She kills Lynn, clearly jealous over how John has been treating her, and proving that despite her infatuation with John, she really doesn't understand what they're doing.
And I'm just a pawn in your stupid games.
She's strangely sympathetic as we watch her struggle with this relationship and evokes more empathy than she did in previous installations. But there's little arguing that this is where she hits her rock bottom of morality. She must have to wrestle the gold medal away from the engineer of horrors that has held it for the past 2 movies. But let's really break down these killers on our evil board. Okay, as usual, we're ranking our killers on a scale of 1 to 100, with 100 being the highest evil score possible. We score them in 10 categories, each on a scale of 1 to 10, then tally them all together. Remember, more points equals more evil. First up, kill count. As per our new kill point system, John gets 6 points for reaching 20 total kills throughout the franchise. And Amanda gets 2 points for her 3 kills. Next, does the killer have the capacity to love somebody? Anybody? We're giving John 3 points. He actually says, "I love you," to the image he sees of Jill, though it's also possible he's just saying this to get under Amanda's skin, as he's really saying it out loud in Lynn's direction. It's also worth noting that his gentility towards Amanda implies some level of affection there as well. Amanda is getting 2 points. We know that she loves John, even if it's not a healthy love or expressed in a healthy way. She doesn't say it, and we're not sure she'd openly admit it, which is why we're keeping just a couple points on the board. Was the killer wronged in some way? John gets a 7 out of 10 here. Last video, we gave him 8 out of 10 just for bad luck, but we're knocking him down to 7 points because his interactions with Lynn paint the picture that Dr. Gordon wasn't the only doctor who treated him as less than a person during his initial cancer diagnosis.
Rules of our game have been made very clear.
He wasn't really wronged terribly, but the pattern of disrespect does help push him toward the psychotic actions. Amanda gets a 5 out of 10. She was definitely wronged, and this does motivate her killings. But the person who wronged her was Jigsaw, and she's not killing to get back at him, she's killing to be more like him, which we feel isn't the same moral justification that a revenge arc would be. Since she doesn't see herself as a victim of John, we're compromising at a middle of the road 5 out of 10. Now, how much pleasure or joy does the killer get from their actions? We gave John a 10 last time, but now we're bringing it down to a 9. He doesn't seem to really enjoy this set of traps as much, but rather looks at it as something he must do. There's even a certain amount of regret toward the end once he's seen his student shot. Amanda, however, does get the full 10 out of 10. It's obvious that she's loving every second of the control she has, and the only time she's not enjoying herself are the times when she stops being in control. Does the killer need to kill to survive? No! Neither Amanda nor John need to kill to survive. In our last video, we made a case about immortality through work being a cure for cancer, but that arc was dropped pretty quickly in this film and isn't brought up at all. As a matter of fact, John puts them both into a fatal trap, ensuring neither of them would survive. Does the killer have some warped moral code or believe they're killing for the greater good? John gets a 4 out of 10 here. His code is tenuous and flawed, and seemingly changed from the other movies, but he believes in it enough to put his own life on the line to uphold it. Amanda gets a 9 out of 10. She said in Saw 2 she was killing to protect John's legacy, but we're definitely starting to think she kills because she likes it. She actually rejects John's entire premise in the movie in a fit of jealousy that only makes her more murderous. Is the killer especially cruel in how they kill or torture? John and Amanda both get a 10 out of 10 in cruelty. John for the rack trap, Amanda for the crucifix trap. Case closed, no further evidence needed. Does the killer show mercy? John gets an 8 out of 10. His traps are winnable, and he seems to be very compassionate to Amanda, even after she failed her test. Amanda gets a 10 out of 10 for being merciless. Her traps just torture people, giving them false hope before they meet their violent ends regardless. Do the killers have any diminished mental capacity? Both John and Amanda take 10 out of 10 points here. Is the killer a demon, satanic, or otherwise an extension of the devil or hell? Neither John nor Amanda have demonic influences of any kind. Finally, our formula requires us to divide their score by 50% if a killer was being controlled by some known supernatural or otherwise mind-controlling entity. This is not relevant here. So the final evil score on our evil board comes out to John Kramer with a total evil score of 67 out of 100. And Amanda Young with a total evil score of 68 out of 100. What can we say? Jigsaw's twisted moral code is what separates him from some of the worst slasher movie killers. And Amanda barely squeaks by to take the gold. Now let's wrap up this evil board with the kill-death ratios as well as our Saints and Sinners medals. This is one of our most complex KDR sections ever, so buckle up. There are 10 on-screen deaths in Saw 3, 9 of which happen in or directly after a trap. We have a precedent of giving kill points to John for all trap-related deaths, but because Amanda is designing her own traps, she's going to steal some of these points for the film. John gets credit for killing Danica, Tim, and Judge Holden, as they were all part of the test he had planned for Jeff. By that same ruling, we're also compelled to give him the 3 kills that result from Amanda's failing of the final test he had planned for her, including his own. He will also be awarded assists for the 3 deaths that Amanda is getting the kills for the varying degrees to which he helped her choose victims and execute her plans. Jeff will be awarded a staggering 6 assists, 2 for his inaction leading to the deaths of Tim and Danica, 1 for accidentally shooting Judge Halden, 1 for pulling the trigger on Amanda during her test, 1 for killing John, also during Amanda's test, and 1 for accidentally killing his wife, Lynn, whose explosive collar was detonated as a result of John's heart stopping. It's important to note that while he did actively choose to kill 2 of those people, John has already claimed the points for those, since it was part of his plan to test Amanda. And Jigsaw gets all credit for trap deaths. Tim gets 1 kill for running over Dylan and setting the whole thing in motion. And finally, Amanda gets 3 kills and several assists. She designed the traps that killed Troy and Carrie, giving her those kills. We're also going to give her credit for mercy killing Adam. Although he would have eventually died in the bathroom, making it John's kill, John specifically says he doesn't take credit for that one and considers the mercy killing to be a murder. Under those very extenuating circumstances, we've decided to award her the kill, which technically did happen outside the trap, and John another assist. Amanda will be getting assists for Lynn, Jeff, Danica, Timothy, and Judge Halden for helping to kidnap them, design the traps that held them, and in Lynn's case, do the actual shooting herself. With that said, let's award some medals. The gold, silver, and bronze medals of good go to the Denlin siblings, Carrie and Judge Halden respectively. Our medal for most righteous kill has to go to Jeff for, in a moment of poetic justice, taking a power saw to John Kramer's throat. Our greatest sacrifice medal actually goes to John this time around. He sacrificed himself and Amanda, whom he genuinely seems to care for, to protect his legacy. He'd rather see them both killed than see the morality behind his traps tarnished. His logic and actions are all twisted, but he did knowingly and voluntarily make the biggest sacrifice to protect what he believes in. As far as our sinner medals go, the gold, silver, and bronze medals of evil go to Amanda, John, and Eric Matthews respectively. The cruelest kill goes to John for killing Timothy in the rack trap. Carrie having her ribs torn open in the crucifix trap made for a really close contender, and we're not saying that acid was a walk in the park, but Tim's death is slower, more certain, and absolutely excruciating as he has his limbs twisted off one at a time. The worst betrayal medal could go to virtually any of the characters, but we're going to give it to John for testing Amanda. Again. It's true that she needed more testing because she didn't really understand his mission, but the fact that she failed so horribly and that he was able to accurately predict such an intricate trap means that he failed her as a teacher. Taking both their lives over it was an incredibly cruel betrayal when she thought she was safe. The Darwin medal goes to Judge Halden. Here's a tip. Never stand in front of a device that someone is tinkering with if you know that the device has a shotgun in it. Firearm Safety 101, guys. And finally, our 7 deadly sin medals. The lust medal goes to Dr. Lynn Denlin for dealing with the loss of her son by having an affair. She also gets the gluttony medal for her over-reliance on medication to numb her pain. The wrath medal goes to her husband, Jeff, for his revenge fantasies and his willingness to act on those violent instincts. We're also giving him the sloth medal for the 3 people that accidentally died due to his reluctance to take action when needed, and the greed medal for his desperation to cling to sentimental items above all else. The pride medal goes to Amanda for how she brags about her involvement in John's work. She also gets the envy medal for how John's courtesies toward Lynn drive her to murder. And there we have it, all the characters of Saw 3 ranked from best to worst, morally speaking. Did you ever think you'd see the day when John Kramer didn't win our gold medal of evil? Do us a huge favor and like this video, as well as hit the notification bell so you know whenever we upload a new video to Blood Binge, where we satisfy your thirst for all things horror. Thanks for watching!